I live in endless hope that we will not have to spend an entire summer talking on a loop about whether or not an election should or shouldn't be held. But I recognise that up until now, actually, the mood in Westminster has been that Rishi Sunak will push things right to the very limit because with the polls looking really bad for him, we know that there was an Ipsos poll, for example, yesterday that for the first time since they started polling, I think in 1979, the Tories had the worst result they'd ever had. So bad polls don't generally mean that parties opt for an election because we know that the people generally don't think that it's they're a very good place to be. That said, there is another argument, which is the Rwanda bill is currently going through the House of Lords. And there is a question about if the Prime Minister can get that through its final stages and to the point where a flight could take off, he could look to arrange an election in May, which would be at the same time as the local elections. And he could fight it on the basis that, look, I've got Rwanda to the final stages. I'm ready to fly a plane over there. Do you want me to continue, or would you like the Labour Party who are going to scrap this policy? Now, there are lots of risks involved with that and lots of political downsides. But there is another big question about if he doesn't do a May election and the Tories do very badly at the locals, which will happen regardless, then that could have an impact on him too.
Do you think that seeing a plane take off to Rwanda does mean that much to that many people?
I think at this point in time, when you've got both parties very similarly aligned on things like the economy and general direction of travel, both sides are looking for anything to differentiate themselves. And Rwanda is a big point of difference. We know that in certain constituencies, particularly in those red wall seats, immigration does poll really highly. It is something that people worry about. It's not always the top priority around the country. That's generally public services, the NHS, things like that. But it does rank up there. And so there is an argument to be made to say, well, if somebody can offer a tangible solution, then that might be a very good thing. I think the question to ask then is, well, will the Rwanda policy really work? How many people can go? How many flights will take off? And those are questions that we don't know the answer to yet, regardless.
Yeah. And we wouldn't necessarily know the answer to that even by October or November, would we? Even if the Rwanda flights did take off before May.
We wouldn't know the answer. Well, I suppose if flights do start taking off in the spring, which is the promise at the moment, we might be able to get an idea of how many people are going on those flights at any one time. But the scale of the problem is huge, and the number of people who the government have waiting in a so-called backlog, if you like, who've arrived here illegally, is far more than would be acceptable to Rwanda, most likely. So we might know that it can happen. We might have some idea of numbers, but we wouldn't know whether or not it would work. I mean, we've started to see those numbers ticking up of crossings in the channel over the last couple of days, and that's despite returns agreements and measures with the French, which are supposed to cut down on those even before Rwanda is enacted.
Yep. Let's talk about the budget latest because this is, oh gosh, we are less than 24 hours away now, aren't we? The Times splashing this afternoon that Jeremy Hunt will cut national insurance by a further 2 percentage points. That would affect 27 million workers. Is that something that a chancellor is likely to do if an election is quite soon to be called, Kate? I mean, it's a generous dipping into the pocket of government finances, isn't it? More generous than was expected.
It is generous. I think there was another more generous option, which would be to cut income tax, and that was a much more kind of politically explainable thing to do. People generally understand what you mean when you say you're cutting income tax, but it's harder to explain national insurance. It doesn't benefit everybody either, it is worth saying, which is why it's a little bit cheaper. I think the question for the Conservative Party is, will doing this really give them a poll boost? And they've done this before, remember, a two pence cut in national insurance. They did it in the autumn statement and it provided them with absolutely no poll boost at all. In fact, I think things got worse. So there is a big question about whether actually people have just stopped listening. It's also worth pointing out that while the government will spend all day tomorrow selling this as a big tax cut for lots of people around the country, when you take into account other tax measures and the threshold changes, so that thing we talk about often, fiscal drag, over the parliament, actually not very many people will be better off. If you earn between 27 and £59,000, you will overall be better off across the parliament. Anyone who earns over £59,000 will be worse off, and those who earn £16,000 will be the worst affected proportionally. So it's worth bearing that in mind when you start hearing lots of numbers around sort of tax giveaways tomorrow. that you've got to account for the other changes which may not have impacted people quite so beneficially.
So we have Adam Shaw on hand tomorrow afternoon to answer everybody's queries and to put the right pile of coins in the right kind of place. And any questions that you have, we will definitely be taking those on air. Shall we make time to talk about the domestic revelations in Grazia magazine, Kate? Now, Kate, what do we learn about the Prime Minister through this?
I thought that clip was really revealing, and I know people will take it in a couple of different ways. Some people will say, why on earth is he talking about, what his kids eat or who stacks the dishwasher when we're talking about massive public spending cuts? But I think if we suspend our political cynicism for just a moment, it's quite revealing, isn't it, that he gets so upset about the bed not being made that Rishi Sunak, the actual Prime Minister, sometimes leaves his office in number 10 to go back upstairs to the flat to make the bed because he knows he'll be annoyed if it's not made. And I thought it was quite funny that he restacks the dishwasher to increase its productivity. I mean, that's a chancellor through and through, isn't it? He just can't let it be, can't be chaotic. And you know what? This is what people thought Rishi Sunak was like originally, this kind of spreadsheet geeky sort of guy, tech guy, who was a bit awkward, and that was kind of what people expected him to be like. And I don't think we see that side of him very often anymore, partly because things are not going particularly well. So yeah, I think it was quite revealing, and I'm with him on the dishwasher thing. I think if you're going to do it, then stack it properly.
Yeah, I was just thinking to other prime ministers we've had. I mean, if Boris Johnson were to give that kind of interview about making the bed, stacking the dishwasher, we would have had a different outcome
what
there,
were
I think.
Disraeli's bed-making arrangements? We'll never know.
But I'm with you, Kate, on enjoying seeing it, actually. And there is no doubt that Prime Minister Rishi Sunak's relationship with his wife is just... it's sincere, it is endearing, it is sweet. I mean, it is quite pleasant to watch. And actually hearing Theresa May and her husband Philip, you just think, yeah, I mean, these are proper couples, aren't they?
Yeah, and this is something that we always ask our politicians to give us. We want to know who they are. We want to understand a bit more about them. So, I think we've got that a little bit there in that clip with the Prime Minister and his wife. There was an actual serious point to it, which was about the division of labour at home between men and women, and the fact that women often do far more and are not, it's not accounted for in the day-to-day running of a house. Women are basically doing another job alongside often a full-time job too. So that was sort of the point of the clip. But I think you're right. It's nice to see politicians in a kind of more relaxed state. Although I have to say, he didn't look that relaxed, did he? But as relaxed as it gets, maybe.
He never does, though. He never does. Kate, Thank you. Thank you very much indeed. I know you'll have a busy day tomorrow with the budget too. It's Kate McCann, Times Radio's political editor.
I've only heard it. I haven't seen it. What's he wearing?
Oh, I don't know. I've only heard it too.
What's he wearing,
I don't
Kate?
need the visuals.
He's wearing a suit.
Of course.
I think he's got his jacket off, but he's wearing and they're on quite a formal sofa. I mean, they look. It looks like they're prepared for the interview. He's not in tracksuit. Let's put it that way.
Oh, no, I don't think I want to see that. I think he wears a very nice suit. Rishi Sunak looks very smart.
You've changed your tune.
No, I think he looks very smart.
I
Absolutely have. I always thought the best thing about him, compared to Boris Johnson, was that Rishi Sunak always looked like he'd had a wash, and he definitely always wore a good suit.
I remember you had some opinions about his suits
trousers were
and
too
his
short.
Trousers.
Yes, but at least he looks smart.
Gosh, okay.
Kate McCann is Times Radio's political editor. I don't know why I'm not, to be honest.